Have you heard this story about the night the wind over Blackwater Ridge refused to act like ordinary wind? It began as a low murmur threading through the needles of the towering pines, then an unnerving whistle, like someone shaping their breath into a warning. Elias Rowan heard it long before he ever saw what made it. He had been hiking since dawn, boots damp from frost-slick moss, his jacket soaked through from mist that clung to the forest like a second skin. By sundown, the sky bruised into a deep violet haze, and the strange sounds grew sharper, more intentional. Elias paused near an outcrop where the ridge dropped sharply into a ravine. From there, he could see the horizon flicker with dying streaks of sunset, gold swallowing into ash blue. Though he tried to steady his breathing, the cold sliced into him, filling his chest with what felt like crystallized dread. "You're imagining things," he told himself. "Just wind. Just altitude sickness. Keep moving." But then his flashlight flickered, once, twice, and the darkness surged in like water filling a vacuum. Something moved beyond the tree line. A crunch of leaves. A deliberate step. Elias' pulse hammered in his throat. He swung the beam of light towards the sound, but it sputtered out completely, leaving him standing in a darkness so absolute it felt physical, as though it pressed against his skin. The air shifted. Not the subtle sway of a breeze, but a sudden, forceful displacement, like something enormous had just slipped right behind him. Elias' instinct screamed, and he stumbled forward, palms bracing against jagged stone. He could hear breaths, not his, ragged, wet, animalistic. They circled him, or maybe the forest itself was breathing. Lightning clawed across the sky, illuminating the ridge in stark white. For a fraction of a second he saw it, a silhouette far too tall, far too thin, its limbs bent like broken branches, its eyes two pale discs that swallowed the lightning instead of reflecting it. When darkness slammed back down, Elias ran. Branches whipped against his face, tearing cold lines across his skin. His lungs burned. His mind shouted half-coherent terrors. "It saw me. It knew I saw it. It's following." Every few steps he felt vibrations in the ground, soft thuds like padded feet. The forest seemed to close around him, the trees leaning in, their trunks groaning with stress as if pushed by invisible hands. Ahead, faint lights blinked through the pines, warm, orange, human. A cabin. Salvation. Elias burst through the clearing and crashed into the wooden door. It swung inward with a violent crack as he collapsed onto a rough-hewn floor. The cabin was dimly lit by oil lanterns, their flames trembling. He slammed the door shut, bolted it, then pressed his back against it, gasping. Inside, the air smelled of pine tar and something metallic. Shadows wavered across the walls from a small fire in the hearth. Elias' heartbeat still roared in his ears, but he became gradually aware of another sound. Soft footsteps on the wooden floorboards deeper inside the cabin. "Hello?" he whispered, voice breaking. The footsteps stopped. The lantern flame guttered. Then a voice answered, quiet, cracked, impossibly close. "You shouldn't have come here." Outside, the creature's pale eyes pressed against the window. Part 2. Have you heard this story about the train that never appeared on any official schedule, yet hundreds swore they had boarded it, only to return changed, hollow-eyed, whispering of tunnels that breathed and steel that wept? Lila Porter didn't believe any of it, not when her grandfather first warned her, and not even years later when she found the letter he left behind, written with a trembling hand. "If you ever hear the midnight horn at Alderwick Station, do not answer it." But curiosity gnawed at her like an animal with sharp, patient teeth. So she went. The station at night was an abandoned husk, cracked tiles, flickering overhead lamps buzzing like trapped insects. The air carried the smell of old rain and rust. Lila walked along the empty platform, her reflection warped in puddles that rippled despite the stillness. Just a story, she thought. Just superstition. Then the clock above the ticket booth clicked to midnight. A horn sounded, low, mournful, vibrating through her bones like the memory of grief. Wind rushed along the rails, though there was no train approaching. The shadows deepened, bending as though something massive displaced them. And then the train appeared. Not in a burst of light, not emerging from the distance, just there, sudden and silent. Matte black metal, windows opaque, its surface breathing out soft puffs of steam shaped like shuddering sighs. Lila's heart lurched painfully. Her grandfather's warning flashed through her mind, but her feet moved on their own. The doors hissed open. No conductor. No announcement. Just a long corridor lit by dim red lamps. The smell of iron was overwhelming, fresh and wet, like a wound. She boarded. As soon as her foot crossed the threshold, the doors slammed shut. The train pulled forward with a violent jolt, throwing her against a seat. Her ears rang. The lamps flickered, casting the carriage in pulsing shadow. "Hello?" she called out. Her voice sounded swallowed, absorbed by the walls. A whisper drifted from the far end. One word, stretched thin. "Lila!" Her blood froze. No one knew she was here. The seats began to shift, leather swelling as though something crawled beneath it. The windows smeared with streaks that looked alarmingly like fingerprints dragging downward. The whisper became a chorus of overlapping voices, children sobbing, men gasping, women pleading. "Don't stay! Don't stay!" Lila staggered backward as a shape peeled itself from the ceiling. Elongated limbs, jointed wrong, its face a blank mask except for a mouth stitched shut with rusted wire. It dropped onto the aisle soundlessly, tilting its head as if listening. The train gained speed, the metal shaking violently, the lights strobing. Lila panicked. Find a door. Find a window. Break something. She grabbed an emergency hammer from the wall, but the window wouldn't crack. It pulsed outward under her touch, like living tissue recoiling. The creature lunged, limbs snapping open like blades. Lila sprinted toward the next carriage, slamming the door behind her, but the whispering followed, now frantic, urgent. She saw a staircase leading down. Her instincts begged her not to descend, but the creature's claws screeched against the door. She took the stairs two at a time. The air grew colder, wetter. The lower deck resembled not a train, but a cavern, walls glistening with moisture, floor uneven like stone. A distant rumble echoed, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Then she saw the faces. Dozens of them, half formed in the walls, eyes blinking, mouths opening and closing soundlessly, as though trapped mid-scream. Her stomach lurched. From behind her, the stitched-mouthed creature shrieked, a sound like tearing metal. Lila ran deeper into the cavernous deck as the heartbeat grew louder, the walls contracting and expanding. She realized with mounting terror that the train wasn't mechanical at all. It was alive. And it was hungry. Have you heard this story about the lighthouse on Pharaoh's Edge? The one said to shine even when its lantern is extinguished, its beam cutting through the sea fog like a blade of ghostly fire? Mara Kells had inherited it from an uncle she barely remembered, a man everyone in the family avoided speaking about. When she arrived by boat, the ocean churned under a slate-gray sky, gulls circling in nervous spirals, as though warning her back. The lighthouse towered above the jagged cliffs, paint peeling in long strips like shedding skin. The waves smashed against the rocks below with hollow booms. Mara felt the salt wind sting her cheeks as she climbed the narrow path. Just a storm, she reassured herself. Just isolation. Inside, the lighthouse smelled of old rope, damp stone, and something faintly sweet, almost floral, but wrong. She shivered. Her uncle's journal sat stacked on a dusty table, pages warped by moisture. The last entry chilled her more than the storm. It watches from the surf. Do not light the lantern tonight. But Mara was stubborn. By dusk, the storm thickened. Clouds roiled low, lightning flashing in the distance. The wind howled through cracks in the tower like a chorus of mourning voices. She climbed the spiral staircase, boots echoing loudly. At the top, she reached the lantern room, its glass panes fogged and rain-streaked. Below, the ocean glowed. A pale luminescence rippled just beneath the surface, circling the base of the cliff. Mara felt her breath catch. Something vast moved underwater, too large to be any whale, its outline shifting, the light seeping through its form like moonlight in smoke. Her heart hammered. It's just phosphorescence, or a trick of the storm. But when she turned, she saw a face reflected in the glass behind her, elongated, eyes like two deep wells of liquid silver. She spun around. Nothing there. Only the lantern room spinning slightly, as fear unsettled her balance. Then the tower shook. A sound rose from the ocean, low, resonant, harmonic. Not quite a roar, not quite a call. It vibrated through the metal platform, up her legs, into her bones. The sea creature's glow intensified, swirling faster. Mara's shaking hand struck a match. She lit the lantern despite the warning. Instantly, the room darkened. The flame didn't illuminate, it devoured the light around it, casting a deep, oppressive shadow. The lighthouse groaned, as though mourning. Outside, the storm clouds parted unnaturally, revealing a vertical slit of starless black sky. And from that void, something began to descend. Have you heard this story about the hotel that rearranged itself each night? The doors never opening to the same hall, the wallpaper shifting patterns like breathing skin, the staircases looping into impossible shapes? Devin Carter arrived at the Obsidian Star intending only to rest before continuing his road trip. He found the lobby dimly lit by chandeliers dripping black crystals, their light shimmering like trap storms. The clerk behind the counter smiled too wide. "Room 217, she said, sliding him a key card from bone. Devin blinked, thinking it a joke. But when he touched it, it felt warm, like it had been recently alive. The hallways smelled of dust and lilacs, an oddly soothing but unsettling mix. As Devin walked, he noticed the carpet patterns shifting beneath his feet, spirals elongating, colors inverting. He stopped, rubbed his eyes, but the patterns continued to move. Stress, he told himself. You're tired. Just get to the room. Inside, the room appeared normal, plush bed, antique desk, rain tapping rhythmically against the window. Devin lay down. Sleep came quickly. He awoke to silence. Not the normal kind, the heavy, suffocating silence that felt manufactured. He sat up. The window was gone. The door too. In their place stood a long, narrow corridor stretching into darkness. His pulse spiked. "Hello?" he called, voice cracking. The corridor answered with a faint whisper. "This way." Devin swallowed hard and stepped inside. The walls throbbed faintly, textured like rough skin. As he walked, the corridor twisted, sloping downward. The air grew damp, metallic. At the bottom, he reached a vast chamber lined with mirrors, hundreds of them, all reflecting him, yet none matching his movements exactly. Some smiled. Some frowned. One version stood utterly still, eyes black and hollow. Devin felt bile rise in his throat. "This isn't real," he whispered. A mirror version stepped forward, out of the glass, its body shimmering like smoke. "You shouldn't have slept," it said in Devin's own voice. Dozens more began stepping out. He ran, the chamber warping behind him, mirrors cracking, the air filling with distorted versions of his breathing. He climbed a staircase that folded like paper under his steps, emerging into a hallway he didn't recognize. The walls whispered, "Stay, stay." He turned a corner and collided with the bone key, now floating, spinning in the air. It shot forward, embedding itself in a door that hadn't existed a second earlier. Desperate, Devin opened it and plunged into utter darkness. Have you heard this story about the man who tried to film the desert night sky and instead recorded something that should never have been seen? Thomas Hale had driven deep into Redwater Desert, far from any town, hoping to capture a meteor shower. The air was warm still, carrying only the faint hum of distant insects. The stars above glittered like shards of cold glass. He set up his camera on a dune, the tripod legs sinking slightly into the soft sand. The sky glowed faintly orange at the horizon, the last traces of twilight giving way. Thomas felt a thrill of excitement. This is perfect. Quiet. Beautiful. But as the first meteor streaked across the sky, the sand beneath him trembled, subtle, rhythmic, like something immense shifting far below. He frowned. Earthquake? Unlikely. The desert was silent again a moment later. Then the stars flickered. Not clouds. The stars themselves blinked out for several seconds, as though something massive had passed in front of them. Thomas squinted upward. A shape loomed overhead, vast, circular, shimmering like heated air. His heart seized. The camera whirred, recording everything. The shape split open. A ring of pale light erupted, bathing the dunes in ghostly illumination. The air grew electric, buzzing against his skin. Thomas stumbled backward. What the hell? Sand exploded upward as tall, thin figures emerged, silhouettes bending unnaturally, their limbs too long, joints too flexible. Their skin glowed faintly, pulsating like embers. Thomas's breath hitched. Run. His mind screamed it, but his legs refused to obey. One figure approached, head tilting with slow curiosity. Its eyes glimmered like molten metal. Images flashed inside Thomas's skull, deserts on other worlds, endless voids, spirals of galaxies collapsing inward. He felt his sanity stretching thin. Stop, please! The creature placed a hand over his camera. The lens warped, melted, then reformed, now pointed directly at him. A voice filled his mind, not a sound, but a sensation. You wanted to capture what falls from the sky. Now you will join it. The ground cracked. Light surged upward. Thomas screamed, and the desert swallowed everything. His camera was found weeks later, half buried in sand, footage corrupted except for the final frame. The sky split open, light pouring through like a second sun. Leave a like and subscribe, so it will be easier for us to continue releasing this kind of content.